Most people think Egypt when they hear the word pyramid. The Great Pyramid of Giza, the Sphinx, the Valley of the Kings. But here's something that will stop you in your tracks. Sudan has more pyramids than Egypt, not a few more. Twice as many. Over 255 ancient pyramids rising from the Sudanese desert, built by a civilization that conquered Egypt, ruled it for a century, and then went home and built something even more extraordinary. For over 3,000 years, the Kingdom of Kush, the ancient African empire of Nubia, built pyramids along the Nile River in what is today the country of Sudan. They built them steeper than Egyptian pyramids. They built them with underground burial chambers carved directly into the rock beneath them. They built them in clusters so close together that you can stand between two pyramids and touch both of them with your hands. And in 1834, an Italian soldier named Giuseppe Ferlini arrived at the greatest of these sites with a pickaxe and explosives. He demolished over 40 pyramids searching for treasure. He found it, sold it to museums in Europe. And when he tried to tell people where it came from, nobody believed him, because nobody believed that Africans could have made something that valuable. Today on Forgotten Empires, this is the story of the Nubian pyramids, the ancient African engineering achievement that history buried under sand and a treasure hunter buried under rubble. Stay until the end, because what the Kingdom of Kush built in Sudan will change how you see ancient Africa forever. To understand the pyramids, you first need to understand who built them. The Kushite kingdoms of ancient Nubia represent a continuous civilizational tradition spanning more than 3,000 years, longer than the entire span of ancient Egyptian civilization from its very first pharaoh to Cleopatra. 3,000 years. It began with the Kingdom of Kerma, which emerged around 2500 BC on the banks of the Nile in what is now northern Sudan. Kerma was one of the first major urban centers in Africa. Its people traded with Egypt to the north and with the kingdoms of Central Africa to the south. They built enormous mud brick temples called defufas that are among the oldest standing structures in Africa today. Then came the Kingdom of Nepeta, and this is where the story becomes extraordinary. In the 8th century BC, the Kushites looked north at Egypt and saw a civilization in chaos, divided, weakened, fighting itself. So they did something nobody expected. They invaded. The Kushite king Yahya led his army north and conquered the most famous civilization in the ancient world. For nearly 100 years, from approximately 760 to 656 BC, Nubian pharaohs sat on the throne of Egypt. They became the 25th dynasty of Egyptian pharaohs. History calls them the Black Pharaohs. They did not rule Egypt as conquerors. They ruled it as protectors. They restored temples that had fallen into disrepair. They revived religious traditions that had been neglected. They built monuments across Egypt in the Egyptian style. And when they were finally driven back south by the Assyrian invasion, they took everything they had learned with them, including how to build pyramids. The Kushites built their pyramids at 3 great sites along the Nile: El Kuru, Nuri, and Meroe. The oldest pyramids were at El Kuru, built for the earliest Kushite king starting around the 7th century BC. At Nuri, the largest and oldest pyramid belongs to the great Kushite pharaoh Taharka, the same king mentioned in the Bible who sent armies to help defend Jerusalem against the Assyrians. But it is Meroe that takes your breath away. When you stand at Meroe today, you see over 200 pyramids rising from the desert floor, 3 separate cemeteries spread across low golden hills. They stand close together, very close, some within touching distance of each other, creating a dense forest of stone that looks completely unlike anything in Egypt. And that is the point, because the Nubian pyramids were not copies of Egyptian pyramids. They were something new, something distinctly Kushite, built with a completely different engineering philosophy. Egyptian pyramids rise at an angle of approximately 54 degrees. Nubian pyramids rise at approximately 72 degrees. That extra steepness is not a coincidence. It is an engineering choice. The steeper angle meant the pyramid required far less stone to reach a significant height. A Nubian pyramid 20 meters tall used a fraction of the material that an Egyptian pyramid of the same height would need. In the harsh, resource-limited environment of the Sudanese desert, this was not a compromise. It was brilliance. The Kushites also invented a completely different burial system. In Egypt, the burial chamber is inside the pyramid. At Meroe, the burial chamber is underground, carved directly into the bedrock beneath the pyramid floor, accessed through a staircase that descended from a small chapel on the eastern face of the pyramid. This meant the pyramid itself was a monument above the surface, while the actual tomb was safe below it, hidden, protected, underground. The construction tool that made all of this possible was a device called a shadoof, a counterbalanced lever hoist used to lift stone blocks into position. The central pivot poles of the shadoof were left buried inside the completed pyramid and covered by the capstone above them. When archaeologists first found these poles inside the pyramids, they did not understand what they were looking at, until they realized they were looking at the ghost of the machine that built the structure around them, the tool buried inside its own creation. Here is the detail about the Nubian pyramids that almost nobody talks about. Many of them were built for women. The Kingdom of Kush had female rulers called Kandakas, warrior queens who commanded armies, led military campaigns, and were buried in pyramids, equal in size and grandeur to those of the male kings beside them. When the Roman Emperor Augustus sent a military force into Nubian territory in 24 BC, the Kushite response was led by a Kandake named Amanirenas. She was described by Roman sources as a one-eyed warrior queen who personally led her troops into battle. Her forces defeated the Roman garrison at Aswan, tore down the bronze statue of Augustus, and buried its head beneath the entrance of her temple so that every person who entered would walk over the face of Rome. The head was discovered by archaeologists in 1912. It is now in the British Museum. Amanirenas eventually negotiated a peace treaty with Rome, on her terms, the only African ruler to successfully negotiate with Augustus from a position of strength. She is buried at Meroe. Her pyramid still stands. For over 1,000 years, the women of Kush were buried in pyramids alongside their kings, equal in death as they had been in life. Their tombs contain wall carvings depicting them in full battle armor, arrows in their quivers, swords at their sides, prisoners kneeling at their feet. These were not ceremonial rulers. These were warrior queens who governed one of the most powerful states in the ancient world. In 1834, an Italian physician named Giuseppe Ferlini arrived in Sudan with official permission from the colonial governor to search for treasure. What he did next is one of the most destructive acts of cultural vandalism in the history of archaeology. Ferlini had a theory. He believed the treasure inside the pyramids was hidden in the capstones at the very top. So instead of excavating properly, instead of carefully studying the structures, he demolished them from the top down. He used explosives. He blew the tops off pyramid after pyramid, working his way across the cemetery at Meroe, destroying 2,000-year-old monuments in search of gold. Over 40 pyramids were demolished. Then at one pyramid, he found it, buried in the capstone, a collection of gold jewelry of such extraordinary quality that when Ferlini returned to Europe and tried to sell it, nobody believed him. The pieces were too sophisticated, too beautiful, too technically perfect. European buyers told him directly, Africans could not have made this. It must be Greek, or Roman, or Egyptian. It cannot be Nubian. Eventually, the pieces were sold. Some went to the State Museum of Egyptian Art in Munich. Others to the Egyptian Museum of Berlin, where they remain today. Jewelry made by African hands in an African kingdom sitting in German museums because nobody believed Africans were capable of making them. The same story as the Benin bronzes. The same story as the Timbuktu manuscripts. The same denial, the same erasure. Different century, same result. And Ferlini's demolition did not just destroy the pyramids he targeted. By removing the tops, he exposed the internal structures of the pyramids to the elements. Sand and wind began eroding them from the inside. Today, across the cemeteries of Meroe, you can see field after field of pyramids with their tops blown off, standing like broken teeth against the Sudanese sky. Monuments that survived 2,000 years of desert could not survive one Italian treasure hunter with explosives. The pyramids of Meroe are not just tombs, they are a record. Every wall inside every burial chamber is covered in carvings and paintings depicting the life of the person buried there. Their military victories, their trade relationships, their religious beliefs, their family, and written in a script that archaeologists are still working to fully decode. The Meroitic script. Ancient Nubia developed its own writing system, completely distinct from Egyptian hieroglyphics. An alphabet of 23 characters used to record their language, their history, and their beliefs. Archaeologists can read every character of the Meroitic alphabet. They know exactly how each symbol sounds, but they cannot fully understand what it means, because the spoken language of ancient Meroe died with the civilization. And without a translation key, without a Rosetta Stone for Meroitic, the writing on the pyramid walls remains partially locked. Thousands of inscriptions, covering hundreds of tombs, telling stories that we can almost hear but cannot yet fully understand. It is the greatest unsolved linguistic mystery in African history. The pyramids of Meroe are listed as a UNESCO World Heritage Site. They were added to the list in 2011. In 2025, ongoing excavations by the Humboldt University of Berlin and the German Archaeological Institute continue to uncover new findings at the site. Every season, something new. Every season, the picture of what Kush actually was becomes a little clearer, a little richer, a little more extraordinary. And every season, the question becomes harder to ignore. Why did it take this long to look? Today, the pyramids of Meroe stand in the Sudanese desert, approximately 200 kilometers northeast of Khartoum. You can visit them. You can walk between them. You can stand close enough to touch two at the same time. But you will see the damage, the blown-off tops, the crumbling stone exposed by Ferlini's explosives, the pyramids rotting from the inside out because one man in 1834 decided that what was inside them mattered more than the monuments themselves. The Kingdom of Kush built a civilization that lasted 3,000 years. It conquered Egypt. It produced warrior queens who defeated Rome. It developed its own writing system. It built more pyramids than Egypt. And it was nearly erased by centuries of neglect to treasure hunter with dynamite and a world that refused to believe Africans were capable of building something so extraordinary. The pyramids are still there, still rising from the desert, still watching. After everything that has been done to them, they are still there. If this story gave you something, share it with someone who needs to hear it. Subscribe to Forgotten Empires and turn on your notification bell. Next week, another story they buried. See you there.